I'm here with Jules of Set Your Sails to talk about Nightfall, out January 21st on Napalm Records. How's things going with you?
I'm good, man. Really stoked. 2 more days to go. Finally released a record, and yeah, we're ready for it.
Is it a mixture of excitement and being nervous at the same time when the album release date is so close?
Yeah, man, definitely. I'm a person, it's very hard to make me nervous, but I'm nervous now. Yeah. I mean, it's 2 more days, and we're actually sitting with the record for about a year and a half or something like that. So finally we can release it. So yeah, a little nervous.
So bringing your personal experience, your fears, your thoughts, everything that has gone through your mind and everything that you have gone through into this record, what was your immediate goal that you wanted to achieve with such a personal album?
I'd say that it's, my personal goal for the record would be that at least one person out there can relate to the lyrics and may find some, may feel understood because they're going through the same stuff. And that would be my personal goal for the record.
How was the creative process for you guys behind this album? How do you guys approach it? How you divide and conquer?
You know, it's like it was a weird process because I always called or writing sessions self-therapy sessions because that's really what it was for me personally. It's a very, very, very personal and honestly written record. So it was very tough for me going through, like diving into my own mind and figuring out my own problems and talk about it and write it down and go through it over and over. So I'd say it was a very, very intense time. And also writing with Andre was a very intense time because when we actually sat together for the first time, we didn't know where we wanted to go with the record. And we honestly just started writing. There are songs on the record which were completely instrumentally written by Andre, and then there's songs which were completely written by me. So, and you can really tell actually, and we were a little afraid that the songs at the end of the day would fit together as an album because they are very different, in fact. So I'd say it was a very intense time, but they fit together somehow, and yeah, part of my journey, definitely. So yeah,
It's a part of
intense.
you can't walk away from it. Outside of those personal attributes that the record has and the challenges that putting them forward bring to you, what other challenges were you guys faced with?
Honestly, I'd say like challenges were like finding our sound really, because as I already said, the songs are very different, and the first record is very different from that. You can clearly tell. And I guess one of the challenges was really figuring out how we're going to sound at the end of the day. And yeah, that was a big, I wouldn't say it was a fight, but it was definitely challenging to do that because it was the actual first time that we really sat together and tried to make it sound as SETYÖURSAILS is going to sound in the future. So yeah, finding our sound.
Finding your DNA. You
Yeah.
mentioned the diversity of the record in terms of how you guys created and having two different minds coming together with their own ideas, putting these songs. So at the end of the day, how did you end up resolving the issue of having these different styles and creating the path that the record has from beginning all the way to the end?
You know what? Since the lyrics are pretty much, I'd say they're almost like my diary, and dealing with depression, you don't always have the same mood. You're not always extremely angry. You're not always extremely sad. There's mood swings all the time. There's even days you feel nothing at all, and that represents also the album because the songs are so different. They're songs that are very soft, and in that moment when I wrote, for example, Deadline is a song that I had on my computer for 4 years, and it represents the fight with depression, and it represents this roller coaster of going through emotions. And so when I actually sat down and I listened to all the demos that we've had, I was like, you know what? It doesn't have to be always straight in your face. It doesn't have to be this constant, we're a metalcore band and it's straight in your face, because it's honestly what I went through. And there were days when I was just really extremely sad and vulnerable, and I wanted to write something softer. And that's what it is. So I'd say that at the end of the day, they fit together because it represents this roller coaster of emotions you have when you're dealing with something like depression.
You mentioned the lyrics being almost pages of your diary. What kind of impact do those lyrics then have in the creation of the music? Do they come in at the end, or at some point in time, did the lyrics define how you guys approach specific songs?
I'd say both. There's songs which started with my lyrics. Like, I have a zillion voice memos on my phone. So sometimes it just started with a voice memo I recorded a couple years ago, and then I sat down on the piano and started creating a melody to it. But for the most part, I'd say that we started with creating the melodies and the basic structure, but then when the lyrics came in, we changed a lot, because Andre always says, our guitarist who's writing songs with me, he always says that he finds it very challenging to write choruses because he's not a singer. He doesn't know where I'm going to go with my voice and how the melody of the vocal is going to be at the end. So we start writing a basic structure, and then the vocals come in, and then we change the harmonies and the parts. That's basically how we do it.
The diversity that you mentioned that it exists on this record, as far as the sound is concerned, the roller coaster that gives the record, is this going to springboard you and give you the comfort and the know-how for future albums to continue down this path in order for the albums to have this diversity of approach from beginning to end?
Honestly, I have no idea where we're gonna go with the next one, because we never sit down on purpose saying, okay, we're gonna sound like this. The song is gonna be a typical metalcore song, or this song is gonna sound like that. We never did that. It was always like I was facing some of my demons, and then I sat down and I started writing something, and then same did Andre. So yeah, I don't know where we're gonna go. We actually started writing for the next record, but I have no idea. It really depends on how I will be by the time we're writing the songs. So I have no idea. Maybe it's gonna be straight in your face metalcore, deathcore stuff, or it's gonna be a pop record. I have no clue.
You mentioned the sound that this album has, all the elements that it has, but I really want to talk a little bit more about what's behind that sound and what's behind those elements. You mentioned your diary, the lyrics being all of that. Is it difficult for you now to look back at some of these songs and even perform these tracks, considering the nature and the emotional baggage that exists within those tracks?
Man, I was actually struggling with releasing Secrets because it is seriously the most important thing I've ever written. It's a topic that I was never able to talk about with my friends or even with my own mother. Because my mother, I grew up with an alcohol addicted mother, and she's sober for many years now. But there was a time when we were in contact for a lot of years, and I didn't know how to face it. I didn't know how to treat her and stuff like that. So I took a step back. But now last year I turned 30, and I kind of like changed perspectives, and all this anger that gathered in my teenage years, I kind of like projected it to her, when in fact it was meant to be projected on the disease itself. So I wasn't really angry. I mean, I'm still pissed of what happened and how my teenage years went, but it's not her fault after all. And I kind of like I figured out my way to talk about it, and it's very fucking personal. So I was really struggling to release it. But at the same time, since I already said it's so honest that it's a part of my history, right? I cannot, as you already said, I can't deny it, or I cannot um, pretend it wasn't there. It didn't happen. So it did happen, and I made my way through it, and it's part of my history. So it's out there, and yeah, I mean, it's good to go through it over and over again because it's part of my healing process, right? So I would say I forced myself to go through it, and that's a positive thing, I feel like.
Did you talk to your mom before the song came out, or is that a conversation that hasn't happened yet?
No, she doesn't know. But we're having a good relationship now, and I was actually thinking of talking to her about it, but at the end of the day, it's my thing. It wouldn't change. Wouldn't have changed anything. It's what I thought in that moment and what I wrote down, and it is what it is. But yeah, I probably we'll have a talk.
Yeah, I think I think maybe it might be necessary, because you just, I understand where you're coming from, but there's always the chance that the person on the other end receives it from a different perspective, right? Like it's more about you, not as much about her, but she may see it differently. So I was just wondering what happened there.
Yeah, but you know what? I wrote songs in the past that were very judging, and they were very like, it's all your fault and you're to blame and stuff like that. And like in Secrets, it's like, I understand you, and it's a disease, and I forgive you for that. What happened? Still, I'm pissed, but um, you know, it. I mean, it is what it is. I something that I've learned is to be honest about myself, because that really helps you, especially when you're dealing with depression or shit like that.
You talked about earlier about trying to find the band's sound on this record. So the question is, did you find it? And if so, what is it?
Oh man, I don't know really. I
You're still
mean,
looking
we
for it.
get this. What was that?
You're still looking for it.
Yeah, we're still looking for it. Yeah, I mean, this is so hard. I don't really, I'm a person, I don't really give a fuck about genres, because what does that even mean? I believe that keeping your mind as open as possible is the best you can do, especially as an artist. So I think we found ourselves in the record in some songs, yeah, but I'd say there's some potential to really say this is SETYÖURSAILS, but yeah, we're still very very proud of the record and very happy with the sound and stuff. But yeah, it's our first real record, and I think we have some more time to figure out how we're gonna sound in the future.
We talked about the music, we've talked about the lyrics. I want to talk about your vocals. How do you approach an album vocally? Do you prepare beforehand? Do you look at the lyrics, you look at the songs, and you start to, in your mind, decide where you're going to go? Or is it more organically when it comes time to start demoing it?
um I imagine it in my head. It's always like, I have so many weird voice memos on my phone. It's like, and then I sing something, then I'm like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and then I know I just want to shout in that part. So it comes naturally when I'm listening to the instrumentals, and then I do it in my head, and then I hear it in my head, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. But there were things that didn't really work out. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this very very harsh, and it's gonna be straight in your face. And then when we were demoing it, I was like, it's not gonna be like that at the end of the day. So that's not working. I can't breathe in between or stuff like that, because there's three different techniques that I'm using while singing. There's clean vocals, then there's like something in between, a little distortion, and then there's real loud shouting. And sometimes I'm a person, I write too many words. I put too many words in a sentence. So I sometimes went like Oh, no, I can't do it. I can't breathe. This is not working out. So I just put out a couple of words and then it worked out. But for the most part, I start building a song in my head.
For those that are discovering the band for the first time with this record, what do you hope they walk away with?
Um, I hope they have a good time listening to it. I mean, their songs, they are very, very deep. I mean, at least we have Mirror, which is a little bit of a mood lifter, I'd say. So the other, I believe that you actually have to sit with the record. Like you have to sit down, listen to it, and have maybe even have the lyrics with you and like go through the songs because they're very, very intense, right?
Mhm.
But Mirror is a song, for example, that it comes very light, so people listen to it, and it's a little bit of more like rock and roll-ish kind of style. And I really hope that people take some time to really dive into it and give us a chance, because I believe that as I already said, you have to listen to a couple songs more than once to really dive into it. And yeah, that would be it. Just give us a chance to really
Sure.
understand the
I,
songs.
I have to say this because it's interesting you mentioned Mirrors, and you're mentioning that because obviously I heard that song first. We checked out the video on the channel. That was the first introduction to the band. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
listened to the album, that song in the context of the record sounded a lot better to me than just listening to it on its own. Because the record
Mm-hmm.
has a nice ability to, give you a little bit of certain elements so that when you move from song to song, there's a little bit of a sense of growth that exists, and you start to get more used to the changes that exist within the record. So it's really interesting you bring that song up, because I felt like while it works well on its own, in the context of the record, it sounds a lot better. It's almost like a completely different song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. I just saying it. I have this with a couple of other songs actually. I have this with What's Wrong and Reason and Anchor. These are songs like if I would just listen to them, I would probably not I wouldn't even know that this band could go any more any heavier, because it's, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like we were really struggling at the beginning because we thought, oh man, what if people don't get the context of the album and maybe just listen to one song and just think, what is that? Doesn't fit. But as a whole, it actually does fit, you know. So yeah, it's you know, it's weird that all the songs seem not really to fit but together, but in fact they do. But yeah, that's why I believe Mirror and Ghost and Nightfall, we actually released Nightfall today, the single, um do really represent the record pretty good, so people can dive into it.
Yeah, and get a little bit of a better idea of everything else. I have
Yeah.
one last question for you. If this album was taken off of pages of your diary, is the diary closed now, or there's still some unwritten pages at the end?
Oh man, I have this is a never-ending story. I have so many songs and so many ideas for songs in my head, and there's so many lyrics on my phone. I believe I have like 4,000 something like that notes on my phone. There are a lot more stories I have, and yeah, it's not closed at all.
So we have a lot more to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah. We just started writing for the next record this week.
So you guys don't stop. You have an album coming out. You're already working on the next album.
No, we have to work. We have to keep it going. We
That's
still
what
have
keeps
to
you
figure out
sane.
a sound, right?
Yeah, but that's what keeps you sane, right? That's what keeps your mind moving, and that's what keeps you in a good place. So it's important to have something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, Jules, thank you very much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure. You have a magnificent voice. I think I outlined that on the album review that I did, but since I
I
have you
watched it.
here, I figure I'll tell you in person. I absolutely love your vocals on this record. It's one of the things that I hold on to and I gravitated to throughout the entire experience was your voice. You were a perfect narrator in terms of taking me from the first track all the way to the end.
Oh man, thank you. Am I red already? No. Man, I actually watched all of your videos. We watched your review yesterday, and I watched your reaction video when it came out, and oh man, I was actually sitting in a hotel room, and I was laughing so hard that the neighbor next to me actually knocked on the door because I had knocked on the wall. So I was like, especially when it came to a drummer's hair, that was fucking hilarious. It was awesome.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed our videos. We enjoyed checking you guys out, and you're definitely going to stay on our radar. And once again, thank you very much for taking the time today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Take care.